businesses or individually ran businesses and cooperatives would have competed. A lot of my ANCAP friends or people who identify as anarcho-capitalists would disagree with that, and they say that no, like these, the traditional hierarchical business structure is going to win. You know what I mean? That's what we're going to see. So I'm curious if, I guess maybe you would know, or yeah, like whether who would win, the co-op or the traditional business structure?
It'd be a fight to the death for sure.
Yeah, of course the right answer is I don't know, because I can't predict the future.
Right.
But what we do know is that the whole hierarchical corporate system with the central bank and all that wouldn't exist if it weren't for this, the state being bought off by, and I use the term capitalists. Those are the people that put up the money to pay the lawyers, to pay the lobbyists, to get the laws written in their favor, and so we're totally for entrepreneurship and freedom, and like Jefferson always had this notion that it would be small, individual enterprise, more agrarian economy, and the and I think it was kind of like the New Yorker Hamiltonians and all that. They said no, we need to organize capital better, etc., etc., and that the state can be used and should be used. In fact, George Washington was one of the first real capitalists, because he was the wealthiest guy in America, and after the Revolution and the Articles of Confederation, he rallied a bunch of his buddies to see if they could form a government that could overrule the states, because he was one of the capitalizers of the Potomac Canal Company. And so he wanted to build this canal, and it went through Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania, and he couldn't get permission from all three of them at once. So he and his buddies got together in Annapolis, Maryland, and then they adjourned to Mount Vernon to write this new document that they hoped could overthrow essentially the Articles of Confederation, so they could form this federal entity so they could get what they want for their business. So like George Washington was the original American capitalist. And so anyway, libertarians are for liberation from anyone who would oppress, who would restrict our freedom of trade and all that. So essentially then, under what I'm describing to you, what I think is the proper definition, the people we have to overthrow and get out from under and work around, etc., are the capitalists.
Do you have anything to add, Scott, or maybe we should move on to the next question?
That's fine.
Okay, yeah. So let's tackle, not tackle, but let's get Andrew's question, and then we'll get to you, and we'll get to you. So.
I like what Jack said, I don't know, and I think that's probably the correct answer, is which will win out as to the absentee-owned firm versus the worker-owned firm. I've heard a lot of good arguments for both. Obviously I won't go through. Now there's the economic calculation problem, and without rental prices it's hard to calculate. There's also the fact that workers don't want all their savings tied up, so if they lose their job, they also lose their savings, so they're hesitant to invest in their own company. Kevin Carson has a lot of arguments on the other side that are also good as to which would win out, but ultimately it's predicting the future, I think. But I guess I'm curious, do you two agree with Jack that you don't know, or are you kind of certain that we're going to have a more non-hierarchical, democratic workplace will be the norm versus the hierarchical, or will we have no workplaces? I know Nick is anti-work, so.
Yeah, I mean, we're just going to abolish work, so it's not going to matter. Yeah. But anyway, easy stuff. No, I have preferences, and I have, things that I hope for, but, I don't say for sure that, worker cooperatives are going to be the new norm, and the corporate hierarchy is just going to go extinct. I think there's a lot of benefits.
Unless we dream it.
Right. And I think there's a lot of benefits to cooperative self-employment, partnerships, being a slacker, whatever. But, I'm not going to say in anarchy that they're going to be the norm. I don't like making... I hardly even like getting in those kind of discussions these days, but making those predictions is kind of like,
Well, imagine this, so climate change is real, right? So it's going to change the scale, people aren't going to be able to live in the coastal areas at some point in the future, right? I don't know when that is. Capitalism will fall as we know it today. I don't know if it's in our lifetime, I'm not a soothsayer, I don't know. But here's the thing, is that everybody doesn't want to organize into cooperatives. Everybody doesn't want to give up their things. Everybody doesn't want to, I know people who want to be feral. I know people who want to have kind of hunter-gatherer they want to have land. There's people who are syndicalists who want to have remaining factories if cities fall down. But all of this is, peak oil, all of these things are going to change the future to things that we can't even imagine. So my whole thing about guessing the future is it's not one economic exchange for another, and the words don't matter. And what really matters is how we begin to treat each other and how we begin to imagine worlds beyond ourselves, right? I mean, like if we base it, like I always look at it like ecosystems. If we all have these common ideals of these liberatory ideas, whatever they are, these like common concepts that we kind of all agree on, even if they're abstracted, they'd be like a forest. Like a forest on the northwest coast is different than a forest in Texas. They have similar elements to them, right? But they're all going to look different everywhere. And the thing is, again, if we're voluntarily gathering, some people are going to exchange, some people are going to barter, some people are going to do shit. I mean, that's fine. Just let them do what they're going to do. And there are going to be, but here's the thing, even if corporate, and I don't want a kinder gym like IBM or Google, I don't want any of those, right? Are we clear about that, right? So, and the thing is, we only want those because that's what we know, right? I always look at anarcho-capitalism as like, you don't have to give up anything. You get the best of both worlds, right? Because we're on the top of the food chain in some ways. And so that's not what I want. I do want true liberation for people. And the thing is, the imagining I'm talking about is hard if you've never worked in low-income communities, if you've never left the United States, if you have college education, things. These are hard abstracts to think about because they're not realities to you, right? And so it's easier to go around minutia. But the people I live with in my community, I live in a largely low-income, largely black community. They don't want to debate the word capital. What they want is they want the police to stop being an occupying force. They want to figure out how to get jobs with dignity and respect. They want to make a living wage. That's the reality of things. All this other stuff we can sort as we go, and we're going to make mistakes. And I can promise you that anything that we say today, anything that we plan, we say today this is the way it's going to be in 5 years, it will not be that. I've built 4 worker cooperatives. I've built 15 organizations. I've been part of them. There's always unintended outcomes and consequences that we can never see. All the planned economies of the socialists and communists failed miserably, except for our ruling class, And so to me, I want us to think beyond just like, is the market gonna make us equal, or are we gonna change everything and make ourselves equal? And that's a harder question to do because then you have to go, well, there might be something I have to give up because I want to, not because somebody's coercing me to do it. And I think that's a much more abstract and harder question to say. So, I mean, that's where I come from on that. I mean, this is why I don't spend a lot of time online debating these things. I think it's good to talk about these things. And I don't mean to sound dismissive about it at all, right? But the thing is, I saw the future when I was in New Orleans. I saw the absolute collapse of everything around here. When you didn't have access to water and gasoline and electricity and all the things that we can touch with the smartphones and all this stuff, right? And the thing is, that is going to be the reality for some people faster than the rest of us. So what are we going to do in the meantime? Are we going to debate the minutia? Are we going to build some things by practicality that make sense, that change our social relations? And for those who've already, under capitalism, have already been exploited and oppressed all this time, are we going to try to help equalize that and build through solidarity? That's the thing I would think would be a much bigger question for libertarians to ask themselves, in my humble opinion. And the thing is, I don't know what the future is going to look like.
So before we get back to questions, a quick word from Chairman Sam Gonkin.
Yeah, and from the Libertarian Black Book, which you should all read, and we have copies for sale up at the AltExpo Village. And now, I just want to mention, when Konkin uses the word capitalist in this sentence, he means a holder of capital, whereas there's like a couple of uses. He says, in an agorist society, division of labor and self-respect of each worker, capitalist, entrepreneur, will probably eliminate the traditional business organization, especially the corporate hierarchy, which is an imitation of the state and not an imitation of the market. Most companies will be associations of independent contractors, consultants, and other companies. Many may be just one entrepreneur and all his services, computers, suppliers, and customers. This mode of operation is already around and growing in the freer segments of Western economies. So yeah, he says the hierarchical system will probably fall.
Well, and he doesn't predict co-ops either. He predicts almost complete autarky in that everyone's their own small business, right?
Sure.
No, that's true. I agree.
Yeah. And Benjamin Tucker said the same thing. So, it's not outside the scope. Right, and not all co-ops are equal or libertarian. Some co-ops really suck. We're gonna get to
It's
him,
actually
and
just
then
the NDAA guy and then him.
yeah. So we'll try to get as many people as possible.
No, that guy was.
I wanted to make an observation on capitalism over its history. One of the first large capitalist societies, at least relatively, was the Romans. They were I can't think of the word. They had royalty.
Monarchy.
Yes.
Empire. They were an empire.
They basically fell apart when they got larger than their ships could take them. And they couldn't find more resources to bring home. The same thing is happening again with the United States. We basically have people all over the planet trying to bring home these resources. We're outgrowing our resources here. So we're going to collapse because we've outgrown the resources. What will likely happen the third time, if the cycle repeats, is people probably start colonizing the moon or something, and other planets, and eventually, at some point down the line, we'll leave our own star system. I think once this happens, and there's no question that this is several hundred years off, that essentially all resources become near worthless. I mean, just as an example of some scientific journal I've heard, there's a planet actually made entirely out of diamonds. You can find whatever you need once you reach a certain size. There is no limit to what you can find. Essentially, the need for the class system disintegrates because there's more than any individual or group could ever possibly use.
What's the question?
It wasn't really a question so much as an observation.